guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm your host Dr. Sene, and I'm here today with a story that upsets me every time I think about it. And that is the story of American serial arsonist Thomas A. Sweatt. And guys, this story also brings to mind a terrible crime committed by Abil Khan, an Australian man who tried to commit insurance fraud by setting fire to his shop, killing several innocent people, including a 11-month-old baby in 2014. Horrifying? Indeed. Let's get into this straight on. Thomas A. Sweatt, who set over 350 fires in and around Washington, D.C., is a convicted serial arsonist and was one of the most prolific arsonists in American history. Most of his fires were set in 2003 and 2004. Following his arrest in April 2005, Sweatt admitted to setting fires for more than 30 years. He is currently serving his sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Terre Haute, Indiana. Now guys, Thomas had a bizarre way of committing his crime. However, the apparent sick mind of Thomas was telling him to follow attractive-looking men and set fire to their homes and cars. Whenever Thomas saw an attractive man, he would follow him home, but instead of talking to the object of his affection, Sweatt would set fire to the man's house or car. For more than 30 years, Sweatt set hundreds of fires in the metro Washington, D.C. area. Sweatt often threw petrol and lit up police cars too, and then watched them burn. Now, my research pointed me to the fact that Sweatt was a fry cook and later manager of a Washington fast food restaurant. Starting in 2003, Washington, D.C. and Prince George's County, Maryland became infested with a rash of arson fires. Thomas Sweatt was linked to the fires through DNA evidence found at two scenes, where a fingerprint, some skin cells on a wig, and a singular hair all matched his genetic profile. Sweatt was captured after a Marine Corps security camera identified his vehicle at the scene of a car fire by a barrack. Oh, by the way, I also read that Sweatt was obsessed with Marines, both as self-identification and as part of a sexual fascination with men in uniform. It's also noteworthy that Sweatt had been rejected by the United States Navy in the 1970s. Now guys, back to the fires. The sick arsonist was found guilty of lighting a house fire at 1208 Montello Avenue, Nebraska, USA. Once on the scene, officers located 93-year-old Annie Brown of the Montello Avenue address. DC Fire and emergency personnel transported the victim to the George Washington University Hospital, where she was admitted, but she could not be saved. An autopsy performed determined the cause of death to be smoke inhalation and the manner of death to be a homicide. The second incident occurred at approximately 4:30 a.m. on June 5, 2003. DC Fire EMS personnel responded to 2800 Everett Street, Nebraska, to a report of a house fire. Upon extinguishing the blaze on the first floor of the residence, firefighters located 85-year-old Lou Edna Jones of Everett Street address inside. She was transported to the Washington Hospital Center's MedStar unit, where she was pronounced dead. On Thursday, August 4, 2005, 50-year-old Thomas Sweatt was arrested and charged with arson and homicide. The story of Sweatt and his captor was featured on True TV and Investigation Discovery channels and as part of the Forensic Files series. During the Forensic Files episode, it was said that Sweatt revealed the motive for his crimes to the police, but in exchange for his confession, he asked that the motive remained secret. The only things that were revealed in the episode were that he set the fires to silence voices that he heard and to relieve stress. The sentencing of Sweatt resulted in a mandatory life sentence on September 12, 2005. Before I finish off with the story of the deadly arsonist Thomas Sweatt, I must inform you that I also found out that on January 11, 1985, Sweatt, who had finished his late shift as a cook at one of the Roy Rogers restaurants, had followed a male stranger in his 30s whom he had found attractive as the man was walking home. He actually had a desire to meet this man. Wanting to see the stranger again, Sweatt went home and returned to his house with a 2-liter soda bottle filled with gasoline. From the front porch of the stranger's house, he poured the gasoline under the front door and lit it. On the second floor of the house, the stranger, Roy Pickett, and his wife and daughter and stepdaughter were all sleeping. His son and stepson were asleep in the basement and were unharmed. The others suffered severe burn injuries, and his wife, Bessie, was killed. Roy Pickett also later died from his injuries on March 5, 1985. The official fire report at the time mistakenly blamed a dropped cigarette for the reason the fire started. Investigators closed 353 cases with Sweatt's confessions. 353 cases. In his guilty plea, Thomas Sweatt confessed to nearly 400 fires, several of them fatal. And now to a man in Sydney, Abil Khan, who was found guilty of killing 3 people by setting fire to his shop, and he has been sentenced to a minimum of 30 years in jail. The former convenience store owner was found guilty by a Supreme Court jury of the September 2014 murder, 27-year-old Chris Noble, and the manslaughter of 11-month-old Jude and his 31-year-old mother, Bianca O'Brien. Khan, 46, was also found guilty of causing grievous bodily harm to Mr. Noble's flatmate, Todd Fisher, wounding a second flatmate, Corey Cameron, and destroying a building for financial gain. His maximum sentence is 40 years, and with time served, he will not be eligible for parole until at least 2044. Mr. Noble and his flatmates lived above the store, and Miss O'Brien and her family lived in a neighboring unit. Khan was burnt too, and he had not expected his fire bombs to explode before he got out of the shop. His bizarre tales of 3 men who came in and threatened to kill him and robbed him and then set fire, all dismissed by the court. Of course, nonsense. Well, guys, he has a long time to think about his horrific selfish actions and his baloney, all for financial gain. And he can also think of the lives lost due to his horrendously greedy, sick actions. Guys, let's hope that these 2 arsonists and killers, American criminal Thomas Sweatt and Australian arsonist and killer criminal Abil Khan, find some mental peace and start coming to terms with the evil they have spread, with their diabolical deeds that brought devastating consequences to many innocent lives. Hope these 2 unfortunate men reach out for religious or spiritual help and guidance and are able to repent for their actions and make the most of what is left of their human existence. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Good night.